Hello, and welcome back to It's In You podcast. Now, I really enjoy reflecting, and it is something that I think everybody should be doing, but not just leaving it till once a year. I reflect constantly on where I'm at, where I would like to be, what worked well, what didn't work well. I'm constantly reflecting and on because for myself, I really love goal setting. I love goal setting, and I am, again, the same thing. I'm constantly setting up my goals. So I want to speak today about why it's really, really important to reflect with the new year. Everybody, it's a very common time for people to start setting new goals. And I want you to skyrocket this year. So in order for us to skyrocket, we need to spend some time reflecting and looking back. So if we continually just keep trying to move forward without looking back at where we've been, what worked well, what didn't work well, what would we actually really want, then we're just going to keep moving forward and maybe not actually really getting at where we want to be, or not getting as far forward the quickest possible way. And I'm not saying that we want to do everything just quickly, but you want to do things the most efficient way. So if when we spend some time reflecting and looking back, you're not going to waste any more time. And that's what I think is really, really important. When we can reflect and look back on our progress, what I see happens a lot is people actually realize that they've come a lot further than what they thought they did, because you're constantly with yourself. So you do forget how far you've actually come. When with my group classes, I used to always do fitness tests because people forget where they started. They forget that they could only do 10 squats and now they could do 60 in the time frame. That you forget where you were at because you see yourself every day or you're living with yourself. So reflecting on your progress, it does give you a real sense of purpose, and especially once your goals achieved, and that can help turn into more happiness and productivity. So we want to be able to reflect to help us process and make meaning of everything, of where you're going, knowing that everything things are working, maybe things are not working. It is one of your tools that we should have in our toolbox for life. When we take this point back and take this step back and reflect, then you can look at the bigger picture and you can really think about the journey that you're on, and are we going the way that we want to do? Because sometimes, and I know what's happened with me, you get caught up. You get caught up in things, and I actually caught myself doing it a couple of weeks ago. I caught myself getting caught up in something else, and I took some time to reflect. And I was like, hey, I was getting caught up in what other people were asking me to do, and I'd actually veered off the path of what I actually wanted. And again, that's why it's important to reflect. Once I'd realized that, I pulled myself back in line and got back onto the path that I'm wanting to follow. And that's why spending this time to reflect and look back is really, really important. And when we spend the time to reflect, you're not going to get bogged down with the everyday stuff. Okay. When you're reflecting and you're spending that time reflecting, you're going to believe more in the process, and you're going to see how far you come. Because what I think the biggest thing that people forget is they don't realize, or they expect this big dramatic change to happen, but it's all the little steps that add up to cause your big change. So, I just spoke to somebody the other day. They had lost a huge amount of weight, but she's been working on this for probably 2.5, 3 years. It's easy to say now I've lost 30 kilos. But it was a process of little steps and working on little things that got her there. So this is what I'm saying. We've got to spend this time to reflect and to believe more in the process and to celebrate these little small wins. And if you are somebody, you are shying away from reflecting, why am I not doing this? It could be because you're feeling scared of not achieving your goal. you're feeling scared of realizing something that maybe you're not actually wanting to see, it's just important to start to recognize if that is what you're doing. And if you're recognizing that, then let's just start recognizing that you are shying away from this reflecting, because possibly you are scared of not achieving your goal, or you're scared of realizing something that you didn't want to have to deal with, or any of those things. But it is such an important process. Now, there's so many studies that have been done on this, but there was a study, it found employees who reflected on their day ahead of commuting to work were happier, they were more productive, and less burnt out than people who didn't reflect. So that's somebody that they're reflecting on their day. And like I said, reflection shouldn't just be something that we do at the end of the year. It's something you can be doing all the time. Like I said, I'm always reflecting back. So the same study found that in just 15 minutes of employees reflecting on a day boosted their performance by 23%. So that's pretty cool. So we just want to spend some time reflecting and seeing where you went. Now, the thing is that if we don't spend the time to look at where we've been, what worked, what didn't work well, if we don't spend that time reflecting on that, then you're not going to know. If you don't spend the time to do this, you're not going to know if you're on the right path. Like I said, I realized I was getting caught up in something else, and I had to remind myself of what I actually wanted and where I was wanting to go. And I pulled myself back in line. And if you don't spend that time, I could have spent months maybe going down a different path. So this is why this is such a crucial step for us. Now, but before you start doing all this, I want you to firstly think, what do you actually want to achieve? And what is it that you want? Now, are you doing something because it's the generic goals or the generic things that people tell you, or you feel like you should want? Big, New Year's, guess all these fitness goals come out, health and fitness type goals. Are you doing it? Is this because it's what you actually, what is it that you actually want? And if we can't spend the time to first ensure that what we actually want, then how are you going to achieve it? And you're already not setting yourself up. So a Forbes poll, it found that the average New Year's resolution lasted 3.74 months. And with only 8% of respondents sticking to it for 1 month, 22% of the people polled lasted 2 months for their resolution. Another 22% lasted 3 months, and 13% lasted 4 months. The average of people that set this goal, they only last three and a bit months on working on that goal. And I don't want that for you. I want you to not think, oh, this is only something I do at New Year's. I want you to start working out where do you actually want to be. So first, where do you actually want to be? And what is it that you truly want? And we've got to spend our time to do this to make sure we're working towards it. If you struggle to decide those things, then look at it from another perspective and think about what you don't want. What you don't want. And sometimes when you think about what you don't want, that can be the catalyst for helping you work out what you do want. So I had a family member that they were looking to move house, and she didn't know what she wanted. She didn't quite know what type of house that she wanted, but she knew the things that she didn't want in the house. So when she led with that, it was getting pretty clear what she actually did want. So spend that time to really think first about what it is that you really, really want. Now, I am somebody that sets goals quite regularly. I'm always reflecting and looking back. Where my husband is somebody that hates all this stuff. He doesn't do it in the new year. I always ask him, I'm always looking in the future, where he's just looking for each day. So I understand what it's like to be around somebody that doesn't like to set goals. So if you are in this category, do not worry, but spend the time to just think, where would you actually like to be? And the thing to remember first is that the fact that you have a thought, and that thought is a thought of something that you would like to achieve, it means it's possible. Because when you set your mind to do something, you do anything. You really can do anything you set your mind to do. We just have to set it. We just have to set the intention out there, decide this is what we want, get a pathway, and start working towards it. Now, of course, when you set yourself up for something, it is never just a straight line forward. There is going to be speed bumps that you're going to run into. There's going to be things that you don't expect to happen along the way, but that's all part of the process. The biggest key to achieving any goal is just not giving up and understanding that you are going to hit speed bumps. There are things that you don't expect that will happen. It's all part of the process. But what I see happen so often is as soon as people start and they hit this kind of roadblock, they give up. They give up once they hit this roadblock because they go, see, I knew I couldn't do it. But understanding that this is all part of the process. And this is actually why it's really important to spend this time reflecting and constantly reflecting every week. Because when we reflect, then you can see, actually, I have done this and I have got further than what you thought. It's so, so important. I'm somebody that I like to write things down. And there's also statistics that of achieving your goal. So research has shown that 42% of people who write down a goal are more likely to achieve it compared to somebody who doesn't write a goal down. I'm somebody I like to put pen to paper. I prefer that than typing in my phone. And it is really important to think about your goal and to write it down, or to write on what, like I've asked you to reflect on what you want, or if you struggle with that, to reflect on what you don't want out of life or out of the new year, any of those things. And it's good to write it down. It's also really nice when you write it down because it's important to look back and you go, oh, I forgot that's what I set out to do at the start of the year. Or you can look off and you get, you realize, like, actually, I've ticked off a lot of the things I set out to do. So spend the time to start thinking about what you want, where you want to be, and start writing it down. Now, as I said, it's really important to look at where you've been. And we want to look at because that is the process in helping us move towards where we actually want to go. Because if you are doing something and you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you're not getting the result you want, then why keep repeating it? It's the insanity quote is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you are coming to New Year's and you're like, every New Year's I think about this and I do this for a few months, and then if you're reflecting back on how you were feeling last year, are you in the same position that you were a year ago? And if you are happy with that, then that's amazing. But if you wanted to change, then we need to change something. And we can't, if we don't spend this time to reflect and look back, we can't work out where the holes are. When I run my programs that we run through the year, I ask people to do like a check-in every week, and we have a sheet that you fill out in, and these are your kind of action steps that we want each week for you to achieve depending on what you're looking for. And when you fill it out on the sheet, because when we're guessing it in our heads, we kind of fool ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do it too. I get it. But when it's on paper, you can see where the holes are. So you can see that, oh my God, 3 times this week, I only got 3,000 steps a day. So let's use that as an example. Only worked out once this week. It's when it's on the piece of paper, when you've got it written down in front of you, and when you spend that time to look back each week, you can see where the holes are and what you need to work on. When you do this, it doesn't mean, the biggest problem I see and why people shy away from doing it is because that this is your reality check. This is your reality check in really achieving whatever you set out to achieve. And when people don't want to do this, or they don't want to look at it because they want to keep kidding themselves in their heads that they're achieving it. So I'll hear people say to me, well, I'm eating pretty well. I'm like, okay, well, let's see how well you're eating, because if you've been eating like you say you have, and then we're getting to here, then and you've not achieved your goal or nothing's changed, then we need to look at the reason why. I had a girl we were running an 8-week program. She had a weight loss goal. We got to halfway and she was guessing with her food because she had tracked her food before. She felt that she knew what she was doing. So she was guessing with her food. We got to the halfway point and we do a check-in. So we did this check-in halfway and nothing had changed. So nothing had changed. I said, have you been tracking your food? She says, no, I know what I'm doing, blah, blah, which I get. I said, okay. I said, do me a favor. I said, let's track because when we can, it's eliminating. Like I said, it's a process. Okay. So so when we track, then we can see like, okay, your food is on point. Let's work on something else. It's got to be another factor. And she started tracking her food and she got her 8-week weight loss goal in 4 weeks so when she was guessing with her food, there was obviously some things that weren't fitting in with where her macros or where she wanted to be, without her quite realizing. As soon as she started tracking, she lost, I think she had a 5-kilo weight loss goal. She lost that 5 kilos in 4 weeks because, and the evidence was there because we tracked the food. And this is what I'm saying, write it down, reflect and look back. And if we hadn't had that check-in or that reflection, she would have kept going on thinking that what she was doing was right. And again, she would have got to the end of the program and nothing would have changed. I had somebody else, she again had a weight loss goal. And now she was tracking her food. And this is why it's looking at all of this stuff as data. And this is what I see is why people shy away from this stuff, because they give it a meaning. They give it a meaning about themselves. I don't want to do this. And you can make some excuse. I don't have the time. I'm not this person. But when we look at all this, when we track this information and we have all these answers, then we can become a detective and we can work it out. And so this lady, she was tracking her food and her food was on par. She had set to a goal and she was doing amazing with her food. But we got to this point and nothing had changed. So but because she'd been tracking her food, I could see that the food wasn't the thing we had to look at. So I was like, you've got your food under control. We now need to look at some other factors. She was exercising well. So again, we could eliminate those things. End up that her sleep was off. So, but because that we had spent this time reflecting and we could look back, we were then able to eliminate these things, and then we knew we had to focus on something else. And this is what I'm saying to you is why this process of reflection is so important. And we have to look back as to where we were. The other thing with this whole process is the reason I see so many people shy away from it, as I keep saying, is because they're starting to give it a meaning about themselves. This is just data. Okay. It is just data. It is just information to give you a story about yourself. The more that you learn and understand yourself, the better for you. My gran is in her 80s and she is in a home and she is losing her mobility because from lack of movement, and she'll come in and the doctors will say things for that to her. And I keep reminding her, I was like, know yourself better than anybody. And I ask and I say the same to you. You need to trust yourself and have more confidence in yourself and your body and understanding your body. And the more that we can look at all this information and put it all together and spend the time to reflect, you're giving yourself more knowledge about you. So you can manage your goals, your health, your fitness, your wellness, your weight. You can manage all this stuff on your own. You don't need to rely on somebody else. You start to trust yourself and know that you can do it. And you can go out and you can have that cake and you can have those extra glass of wine, and you cannot feel guilty for it, and you can still be achieving what you want to achieve. And that's why we want to spend the time reflecting and making sure that we're, and I say to my grand all the time, yourself better than anybody. So they'll come in and she doesn't feel very well, and they'll look at her stats and go, oh, your stats are all perfect. You've got to be fine. But she doesn't feel fine. But what I'm saying is, you know yourself better than anybody. So start trusting yourself. And when we look at all this data, it teaches you so much about you. You have this different confidence, this confidence about yourself. If you are spending this time reflecting and you're looking at a goal, something that you want to achieve, I want you to think about this thing. If you're looking back on last year and you say, okay, I'm going to use weight loss as an example because it's generally the biggest thing that people want to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to look at weight loss. So I'm going to say, okay, so I wanted to lose a certain amount of weight last year, and I'm reflecting back a year later and nothing's changed. Okay, so I want you to think about the first thing that comes to your head is why you didn't achieve that goal. What is that? And the first thing that comes to your head probably is more likely to be a big contributing factor as to why you maybe didn't get there. Because like I said, you know yourself better than everyone. We're just maybe a little bit scared to admit the stuff to ourselves. So you have this goal and you said you really wanted to achieve it, but you didn't take the steps forward to do it. This is not a reason to beat yourself up. It's a reason, it's a time to be realistic with yourself. And I think deep down, we all know the reason why. We all know, you know the reason why you maybe haven't got that goal. And we would like to give ourselves lots of excuses. And I catch myself doing it with myself all the time. But then I keep pulling myself up. When I do it, I notice I'm doing it and I pull myself up. It's really easy to get into that hole of, oh, but I've got this, I've got this stress, I've got that stress. We all have stresses. We all have different factors that influence our life, but it really goes down to being honest with yourself. And sometimes being honest with yourself as in, maybe that's just not my priority at the moment. And that's good. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So take that stress away if it's not your priority. And the biggest thing is we come back to, what do you really want? What is your why? What is your reason? What is the thing that you really, really want out of this year, out of life, out of anything? I've talked about your why so many times, but my why is so important to me, and it is visually in front of my face all the time. So I want to live, and I remind myself of it every day, because this is why I exercise. This is why I eat well. This is why it's something that I'm always working on, because that I want to age really well. I want to live as long as possible. I want to live the best quality life possible. And my belief is that by being fit and strong, that I'm giving my body the best chance of that. I remind myself of it every day. I see it when I go and visit my gran in the home. I see her and other people, and I think, well, I want to make sure that I can be an 80-odd-year-old running around still, not somebody that is chair bound. Now, that's my passion for my life. I've always said I want to pick my kids or my grandkids up, no matter how old they are or how big they are. I want to be strong enough to do that. And that's my driver. So I think if you're looking, we're spending this time to reflect and you're looking back, I really want you to think about, what is the first thing that comes to your mind that you wanted to achieve? If you didn't get it, why you didn't get it, and what your first instincts tell you is going to be on par. And you don't need someone else to tell you. You deep down, it's admitting it to yourself, and then let's start doing something about it. I understand exercise, food. I've done it for many years. I understand it all, and I spent a lot of time working, understanding more about the brain and how that works, because I find that really, really interesting. But like I said, when you look at a whole, we can say, okay, so when I was this size, I was doing this. I was running every day, I was doing this. Now I've had a foot injury that I haven't ran. And so I can look back and go, okay, so I have put on a little bit of weight. But when I was, and that thing, we could start to blame menopause, couldn't we? We could start to blame menopause or some other factors. But there's proven research that menopause does not cause you to put on weight. Your lack of movement or changes in your lifestyle is the thing that makes you put on weight, and that's things that you have control over. So again, if I look at my life, and I use my life as an example, so that if I look back and I say, okay, so I've put on some extra weight and I would like to get rid of that weight. But when I'm really reflecting back, and and I've had all the excuses, trust me. My life is really stressful. My husband's going through this. My kids are going through this. I'm working too much. I now don't have enough time for me to fit exercise in. All of those excuses, trust me. I've got them all. I've used them all. But when I come down to it, and I be really, really honest with myself, and when you're spending this time reflecting, I want you to be really honest with yourself. So when I spend that time to do that, I know that my movement changed, and I didn't change my food to go with my movement. So that's why I did put on some weight. So my movement, I used to run every day. I got this injury. I stopped running. My body was used to that run every day, had been for years. So that changed, and I didn't change my food to tailor that. And like I'm just saying, be honest with yourself. Be honest with you, because it will help you. And let's start this new fresh. Don't like there's no blame. It doesn't make you a loser. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you none of those things. It's just an understanding. And this is where you're at. And this is where you're at now. So let's take this piece of information. Years ago, I realized I was feeling stressed and overwhelmed and everything else. And I was telling myself this story. I can't do this. I can't fit in. I can't fit in anything extra. But the truth is, I could fit it in. I just kept telling myself I couldn't do it. And I just kept telling myself that and using that excuse, which is not true. And that's what I'm saying to you. Work out what are these little stories that you are telling yourself, and I guarantee you that if they're not working towards your why or the reason that what you want to achieve, we can change them. It doesn't need to be the case. And yes, everybody has stresses. Everybody has their own little things that happen in their life, but everything is possible with whatever challenges you have. It is just setting your mind to it. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 questions that I want you to, as we're spending this time to reflecting, I want you to be really honest with yourself. And I'm going to give you 5 questions that we can answer, and we can answer to help you create or carve your path out for 2024. So firstly, I want you to think about what worked well for you this year. So what worked really well? What do you feel you mastered? And we want to spend this time thinking about what did you master? What worked really well for you? What things you actually achieved that you maybe didn't realize? And sometimes you can spend time to go back and look through your phone, because you look through your photos of your phone from January last year. Look back and look at some things, because you will forget. When I look back, I forgot that we did this. At what worked well for you this year. And your next question is, I want you to think of, what do you want to let go of? So moving towards the new year, what do you want to let go of? Now, you might want to do a separate page for each of these things. And I think it's really important, this thinking about letting go of things, because we hold on to stuff. and work out why are you holding on to something. You can let it go. And it can be as simple as writing it down and choosing to let it go and making that choice. You can, there's different things I've had people do, I've had them write letters and put it in the ocean, rip it up, burn it, whatever. But whatever you let go of, let's make this choice to actually let go of it. It's choice. These are things that we can look to move forward, and we don't need to bring this stuff with us on your journey. We can just choose to let it go. And it can be as simple as that. I realized a few years ago there were some things that were bogging me down. They were bogging me down, and they were affecting, and it was some people in my life, and it was affecting me more than anyone else around me, more than them. And I made the conscious choice to let it go. And I just chose to let it go because I realized it was bothering me and affecting me more than anyone. I just made this decision that I was going to let it go. I had thought about it a lot. I knew it was bogging me down. I ignored that. It wasn't as simple like, okay, let go, but you can make the choice. So what are we going to let go of from 2023 or backwards? And we are going to let go of this before we move on to the new year. Now, still spending our time reflecting, I want you to think, what memories did you make? So what were your memories that you made this year? Again, probably great process to look through your phone, look at your photo and really think about those memories what memories did you make? Reflecting on what you would like to achieve. Was this in par with what you were looking for? It's really nice to look back and think, we did this, and I really enjoyed this. So what were these things that you enjoyed, and what memories did you make? And if there's things that brought you so much joy, then maybe that's something you should be looking at working towards or doing again in the new year. My fourth question for you is, what lessons did you learn? Now, I believe that life gives us lessons and we need these lessons. And if we don't choose to take the lesson from it, the same thing will keep happening again. Again, on a thing about thinking about achieving goals and setting yourself out there to get something, you are going to hit roadblocks and things are going to happen that you don't expect. But if you don't spend the time to work out the lesson, that same thing is going to keep occurring until you finally learn the lesson. I believe that your body gives you indicators. So it might tell you might get a little niggle and people ignore it. And that niggle becomes a little bit more and you keep ignoring it. And then your body will eventually say to you, stop ignoring me. I'm going to force you to stop now. To start taking note and think about, what lessons did you learn? And this is a question that I ask myself all the time. Everything that happens to me, I need to learn a lesson from that. I need to learn a lesson from it so that I can move forward. We had a rough year my son had a rough year at school this year. Everything that was happening along the way, I kept always thinking, what do I need to learn from this? So I want to learn because I want to become a better human. I want to be a better person. And there's always lessons for us to learn, and there's always room for us to improve on ourselves. And that's what I think. What lessons did you learn in the year? And then again, we want to take these lessons with us and let go of the other stuff, but spend the time. And the biggest thing is that in everything that happens, we need to take responsibility. We need to take responsibility of actions. And I think when you can start taking responsibility, we can start taking charge. So let's use the example of driving on the road. So I'm driving on the road and I stop at a traffic light and somebody comes behind me and they run up the back of my car. Now, this was not my fault. It's not my fault at all, right? It's the person that went up my backside. But the thing is that there is a time that I can take some responsibility for this. Now, I made a choice to be on the road that day. So when I choose to be driving on the road, you are taking that risk. And that's where I can take responsibility. So I'm just asking you to start taking responsibility for actions or for things that happen. No blame, no blame. Not this is not an excuse to start beating yourself up, to start recognizing that we can take responsibility for things that happen to us. And when we stop excuses, we stop blaming other people, that's where your results are going to happen. Okay. And my fifth question for you to ask yourself is, what do you want to carry with you into the new year? So what do you want to carry with you into the new year? What's the things you've learned? What do you really want to achieve? What do you want to carry with you into the new year? And when you're thinking about this carrying into the new year, you could think about who you actually want to be. So you want to be this person that you imagine that you've achieved. You've already achieved this goal, the goal that you've set out to do. And if you had achieved this goal, how would you act? What would you do? How would you act? Who would you be? And you're going to carry this person into the new year. And I want you to start acting like this person now. So you might not feel like you're that person. You might not look like you're that person, but start acting like them. Acting like the way that you want to be, and start doing it from now. We want to trick our brains into that we're already there achieving it. So just start and think about this person. Who do you want to take forward? Who do you want to be? What lessons did you learn? What things do you want to take forward into the new year? And when you think about that, look at who that would be. And then I want you to start acting that way. So as a little offset from that question, what things with this person that we're taking forward, what would they be doing? What would they be doing in the new year? And write that down. So what are the things that they were doing? How would they wake up in the morning? How would their day run? How would their weeks run? How would their evenings run? What would that be like? And when you have that, that is your action steps. That is your action steps to start your creating and carving this path forward. So I promise you that by spending this time to reflect and asking yourself these five questions, and spending the time to write it down and reflect on it with your family, speak to the people around you. Again, when you ask yourself these questions, you are going to really excel in 2024 because you've spent the time to work out what works, what didn't work, who do I actually want to be, what do I want to take forward, what lessons am I learning? And it is so, so powerful. So please spend the time, re-listen to this podcast, spend the time, pause it as I ask the questions and write it down. And if you have written them down, let me know. I would love to hear from you, to know that you have spent the time and you have written these questions. And I really look forward to the new year and seeing everybody start smashing their goals, because again, if you've set that intention out there, and you really believe in yourself, you can do anything. You will be unstoppable. All we need to do is just start working on it, and start chipping away. Okay, so I'm going to love yous and leave yous, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye.